Hey friends, thanks for listening. Just a real quick update if you are going to KubeCon North America, November 10th through 13th in Atlanta, Georgia. I will be there. I'm going to be there all week, mostly hanging out at the Cedero Labs booth, so feel free to come by and say hi. If you also want to come to a meetup, we are co-hosting one with the folks at Oxide Computer. So if you are listening to this podcast, you probably know about Oxide and the really cool computers they're making. So come out and hang out. We have a link in the show notes for a registration. You do need to register to come. So if you are coming out to the events, feel free to sign up and I hope to see you there. Let's get on with the show. Welcome to Fork Around and Find Out, the podcast about building, running, and maintaining software and systems. Hello and welcome to Fork Around and Find Out, the podcast that puts the EB in your PF. I'm your host, Justin Garrison, and with me, as always, is Autumn Nash. How's it going, Autumn?
Oh, you didn't disappoint with the dad joke.
Well, today on the show, I'm looking at Duffie right now. We got Duffie Cooley on the show, the field CTO of Isovalent at Cisco, and he has a big EBPF shirt on. So, it was there.
Okay, y'all, but Duffie is... okay, I met Duffie before I knew how cool he was and, how much of a legend he was in, Kubernetes world. And Duffie is, the kindest, nicest, most Buddha and everything is okay person, which is not very, I don't know how you do that, this much in infrastructure. Everything's always on fire, and you're just and we're both from Hawaii. Also, I'm a Duffie fan, y'all.
What's funny is that a lot of people actually attribute that to being from Hawaii. They attribute that.
It is, but not me though.
Hawaii.
But then we'll have an Autumn. Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. She's like, yeah, skip that. No.
It might be the large amounts of coffee that I drink. But most people are it's gonna be okay, and I'm like, no, it's not. And then Duffie's like, it's gonna be okay, and I'm like, Duffie said it's gonna be okay, so it's gonna be okay.
What's funny is I think really what this comes down to. So I grew up in theater, which is another one of those industries in which everything is always on fire.
Yep.
Right. And I realized in that experience that adding my own anxiety to the situation was not going to help me solve literally anything.
Yeah.
Right. So the only way that I could really move forward in that environment with all these egos and everything else that was happening was to actually be the calm one.
But it's wild because some people feel like they're gaslighting you when you tell it's going to be okay, but Duffie never gives you that vibe. You know what I mean? Some people, they make it worse when they say it's going to be okay. And I'm like, this is not helping. But there's something about you that's genuine. You know what I mean? You are so kind. You would think that somebody with as much experience and all the cool things you've done and the talks you've given and just the cool things you've done, you're just such a humble, kind human, and you just have this thing about you. And then when you hear you talk about your wife and your kids, oh my god, I was a fan before I knew how cool you were, and then I found out you did all this stuff, and it's just it's so cool. I'm a fan.
Well, thank you, Adam. I appreciate.
So for people that haven't had the privilege of meeting you or talking to you, Duffie, give us a background. What started you in tech? What you've kind of been doing, and then where you ended up now.
So I started in tech. I was kind of, I guess the first thing is, from the whole tech industry, from working in the theater tech industry, I was always interested in technology, right? And so I was very fascinated. I joined the theater situation right around the time that moving lights started happening, right? Which means that there's a light instrument that instead of actually having to focus on one place on the stage, you can actually remotely program that light instrument to point at different parts of the stage, use different colors and all this other stuff. And that to me was I was technology is really where it's at. That's what I want to focus on. When I left Hawaii to come back to California, it was actually much more difficult to get into sound lighting and staging than it was in Hawaii, where I was at the time when I first started. And so I started getting into computers. In high school, I was the TA for the computer class, all of that stuff, because a lot of that stuff always made sense to me. And then I moved into in my professional time. I went back and forth between California and Hawaii. In Hawaii, I was always doing lighting, sound, staging, and rigging. And in California, I was always doing tech stuff, either doing systems administration or network administration, that kind of stuff. At some point, I got really into tech and I worked for a company called Northpoint Communications, where I kind of quickly moved up the support ladder from a place where I was just doing support for people who were installing DSL into homes. I was actually the person they would call to help them subscribe a line and do all of that stuff. I moved up, basically up into the network architecture team very quickly because I was able to like understand this stuff and grow and learn things quickly. And that was like, operating ATM networks that cross the US and across the globe. And then the .com thing fell apart, and I left and I went on the road doing Renaissance fairs for a long time, and then about 4 years, I guess 5
This
years,
is why Duffy is the coolest.
and then I came back and did more network administration, more systems administration, and then I worked for Juniper Networks for about 5.5 years, and then I had an opportunity to really kind of change the trajectory of my career, and I joined a startup which was called Nicira, which was a network virtualization startup. And it was really a super interesting job because the opportunity was I was coming to Nicira after spending 6 years working on hardware and software labs at Juniper Networks. So at that point, I had a really clear picture of a lot of the ways that one can break a network. Like,
Sure.
pretty much had discovered, because in a lab, you're trying to do that, right? So like, like I was able to really understand and troubleshoot and deeply understand what's happening with a network, regardless of the situation we're in. And so when I went to Nicira, yeah.
Can we point out that Justin and Duffy both started as like TAing and support and like figuring things out? And,
Oh man, help desk is such a wonderful start.
Can the people that hire people please hear this? You don't always have to have a fancy degree. It is worth so much salt to be able to figure out problems and come from help desk. Like that sometimes 100%. You may not have the avenue to go to a fancy degree, but kids do have the avenue to get a help desk job. Please let's let that be like a way to get in, because look at these wonderful technologists here that like you guys are now giants in the field. And where did you start? Help desk, which is something that's accessible.
1000%. Could not agree more. And I never went to college. I dropped out of high school.
And you still are badass and awesome.
And I have a fancy degree and learned so much more in the help desk than I did in my degrees.
It's so wild though, because Justin has so much personality, and it's so hard to find like an engineer with personality. And he's got a math degree, and you would assume that he's boring, but he's so much fun. Who would have thought?
Yeah, but Justin, I think, also sees the value in like the people puzzle, right? You also see the value in the fact that like no matter how much you know about a technology, if you're not able to communicate what you know, if you're not able to engage with real people about the technology, you're never going to really reach.
Do you think that led to both of your success? Because you guys do a lot more. I feel like you both are very good with people compared to your typical technological people.
I think the humility of help desk for me helped me know, like, I never tried to be like above the help desk, right? Like I'm still, even today,
other engineers that,
right? Like,
oh my God, some people are so fucking insufferable.
It's all just levels of help desk.
Oh,
and if you are putting down people at the front line, or people that even people that come and say, I have a bug, and you're like, oh, you're doing it wrong. You're doing something that's like completely not the way it's designed to work, or whatever. Like, it's not their problem, right? Like, we wrote the docs wrong, or whatever.
Hire other engineers, and I think not having that humility and not being able to look at the, like, what is the word?
Introspective?
No, in when you work in two different fields, it's on my, like, I'm thinking about when you basically take a field, like,
interdiscipline, maybe.
Yeah, something like that. But it's like interdiscipline or something. It's a word that I was putting somewhere in a doc somewhere. Okay. But like to take, like how you said you did like lighting and help desk, and to take that and then how those skills affect you, and like when you come in as a technologist, like I think like when your engineers on a team lack being able to see other people's skills and how that could bring to a team, because engineering is so different. Like you can be doing infrastructure, you can be doing data. There's not always going to be like a one-to-one. You know what I mean? And I think that we, like, especially right now when we're trying to do so much more with less, being able to figure out how to be force multipliers in your team and to figure out like what skills match, I think we are going to really mess up not hiring those people that worked at that help desk that have that background, because some of them, like Kelsey Hightower, Duffie, Justin, like how many people like though, and can you imagine if somebody missed out on a Duffie or Kelsey or Justin like that? Like, but how'd you go to Hawaii? What made you go to Hawaii? Tell us about that. That's so interesting.
When I was when my mom and my stepfather, when I was 6 and my sister was no wait, I was 8. My sister was 2 years younger than me, so she was 6. So we moved to Hawaii at that time, um, and just partially because my stepfather and my mother really loved it over there, and they wanted to go live over there. And so,
Good reason.
That's
yeah,
what my
I
grandma
mean,
did. That's
Beautiful.
how we
Yeah.
all ended up in Hawaii.
definitely a different time. It was a beautiful time to grow up in Hawaii, but it's definitely a very different time than like even the time that my kids growing up in. Such a wild thing, but yeah. And then at some point, like I came back to California to live with my father, and that's where I got into like all the other fun stuff there.
It's crazy because my childhood was very much hopping back and forth between California and Hawaii. So it's really cool to see somebody with a similar, like, I'm like,
Yeah.
how many people in California do this?
Oh man, my roommates in college, two of them were from Hawaii, and they
It's
would go back and forth.
wild.
Yeah, it was.
Like everyone in California, Nevada, and Oregon, I feel like there's so many of those colleges that we just all like gravitate towards
Yeah.
too. So what'd
Yeah,
you
for
do
sure.
after you did you said Juniper Labs, I think?
And oh yeah,
Then
then
we
I went
started.
to actually Juniper's a big networking company, kind of like Cisco. So it's funny now I've worked for the two big networking companies.
Yeah.
Full cycle.
Um, the so after Nicira was a trippy thing because it was like bringing all of my experience in understanding and troubleshooting networking, and then trying to bring reality to a bunch of really intelligent engineers who were trying to reinvent networking
Yeah.
in software. So
How hard could
like
it
I
be?
know how to what could go wrong? What could go wrong, right? But the whole idea of like, so like what I brought to that situation was like they wrote an entire like software stack that was for networking, and I would come into it and say, okay, but how do I troubleshoot it? Like, how do I understand that this is happening? I'm looking for this behavior on a regular network. How do I find that behavior on a virtual network? Right? Like, and just kind of helping like bring a real sense of like this is how the real thing works. Help me find an analog for
Yeah.
that in the virtual thing, which was a wild experience. Um, and then yeah, after that I went off into after Nicira I left. I went to Apple for the first time. I worked at Apple for building the very first shared infrastructure at Apple, which was also a real blast. Had a lot of fun there. That was actually all based on Mesos and Heroku, and I also did a bunch of stuff with like NSX and stuff there while I was still at VMware as part of the Nicira acquisition. And then after Apple, I went to a small company called Illumio, which is a network security startup. I was there for a year, and then I left. Um, Mainly because I was mostly concerned about the forward direction of the product. I was like, I wasn't super happy with it, and so I left and went and did the next thing, which was I guess back where was that? Mhm. So I went then to CoreOS, and CoreOS was an amazing experience. And basically, because of my experience at Apple, I basically called CoreOS up and was like, "Hey, you should hire me." And they're like, "Why?" And then they allowed me to come in for an interview, and I met Redbeard and I met a bunch of other absolute amazing people in our industry, and they were very happy to see me come in and interview. And but they didn't know me from Adam, and I didn't really know Kubernetes. I just saw that there was a lot of opportunity in Kubernetes because when I was looking at the Kubernetes ecosystem at that time, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like OpenStack was back when OpenStack was very little. Right? I saw this like API driven architecture. I saw a lot of people really jumping on board and bringing their own ideas and building a whole community around it. And I was like, that's the next train, gotta go, right? Like
Yeah.
I want to go work on Kubernetes, and who better to work on Kubernetes with than CoreOS? So
I think that's so legit and a a good thing to pass down to the next generation, because a lot of working in tech really is like doing a thing, doing it well, and then being like, what is the next train? Because that's kind of the cycle and how to survive. I think that's almost like it would be nice to hear you elaborate on if you have any advice on that.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. It's like, like when, I feel like everybody on this podcast is a lifelong learner, right? Somebody who is constantly evaluating what's happening in the space, constantly evaluating what's happening, like new technologies, what's happening with AI, what's happening. Well, you can hate on it. It's all good, right? But like, it doesn't mean you get to like completely disconnect from like what's actually happening in that space, right? Like you still have to like be aware of what's happening in the different technology realms in which we work, because really good stuff comes out of it, regardless of
Yeah.
like, whether we believe it's the right direction. There's some really interesting stuff as a technologist to follow along. And
It's my
then when you
favorite
see
part.
one, yeah,
It's really, it works with my ADHD so well.
right. And then when you see one that you're like very excited about that really connects with you as a technologist, then you're like, well, how do I get involved in that? And honestly, there's more ways to get involved in that stuff now than there have ever been, right? Thanks to open source, thanks to big communities like the CNCF, thanks to thanks to just so many different. There's so many doorways into these things than there were when we were younger, right? Like I feel like it's a
That's
Yeah,
lot
I
so
mean,
easier.
rad
it
that
used to
you
be.
advocate it for yourself to get a job, though. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because that takes a
Oh
lot of
yeah, for sure.
guts.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
It
I mean,
definitely. Those communities used to be private meetups. Like you had to be in a location, you had to know somebody to be able to like get in the door. And even when I think back of like the older days of technology, like Wozniak just called up uh like Hewlett Packard. Like he just called them and said, "Hey, can I have a job?" And they're like, "Yeah." Like that's like one of his stories. Like, "Yeah, I just found them in the phone book and called them and said, 'Give me a job.'" I was like, "Yeah, we'll go ahead. You can come on over and interview." And like those sorts of like stories are like have happened over time, but it's always like someone you knew that got you in the door. And now like those communities have expanded and are hopefully a little more friendly. To let people that don't have a background say, "Hey, if you want to show up and do some work, here's a bunch of first issues that
Uh,
you can try."
I love you guys, but I
exactly.
don't know. It's a little different when you're a woman. I think that we are like really in a, not even just a woman. Like, I think that because of the layoffs and because of where we are, maybe open source might sort of be that way still, but I think that it's like people want you to, I don't know. Like, I feel like we're really in that point where, like, I know that we need to earn trust, right? When it comes to like being engineers, but like, I hope it doesn't push us back into more gatekeepy ways.
Oh
You
yeah,
know what I mean?
for sure.
Like, I think that, like, right now, so much of the hiring is like, how fancy is your degree? How many, like some of, like, do you remember when they used to ask if you had an experience in a language, but they asked for experience that's longer than the language existed? It's that times like 100, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that, like, open source is like, yes, like, I love, I'm a proponent of open source, but it's hard to figure out where you fit in. Maybe do you guys have any advice on, like, maybe people that are starting how to figure out where you fit into those communities?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I think it comes down to those communities again, right? If you can find an area of technology, whether that's infrastructure or programming in Go or solving an audio problem in some program or video editing or like something like that, then the question is like, how do you actually connect with a community that's based around that thing that you're interested in? And even if you don't like show up at like I mean, there's a couple different ways into that. Like some of those things, many of those things these days will actually have like community hours and those sorts of things where you can actually show up and just be part of it and ask questions and like kind of do the people part of it. But and then there's other opportunities where, like as Justin pointed out, like the good first issue and that sort of stuff. And what this does is it does a number of really, really good things for you as a person. Like one of the things it does is it makes you actually start thinking about the problems that that software system or infrastructure has, right? In a way that is more real because you're actually in there trying to actually solve real problems and in coding, or if you're actually trying to solve real problems in communication or like whatever it is that you're working on, you're actually interfacing with that real thing. And that puts you in my mind, it kind of puts you in a better mindset around like what is this really going to be like when I decide to do this or if I get fortunate enough to actually have a job in it, like what's that going to really be like? Like
I
because
also
having
wish
that
that
exposure really changes it.
I wish that open source projects also saw the awesome opportunity in new people, because when you write docs but you've used something for forever, the docs are never good. I don't care what you say, they're just not. When you get new people to try your docs, they find bugs that nobody will ever find if they know, right? Like those new people are such an opportunity to make things better, that I wish that that's how we approach the situation. Like there's something I really liked about your website, and you say like you talk about how you see, like how you bring a different perspective. What is it on your website? It says something about like perspective, and you make things like easier. And I thought like that's so like legit though.
As Duffy opens his website to check what it was.
It has been a minute since I was there.
The
Making
picture
making
of
makes
you and your
makes
daughter
things
is so
possible and
cute.
sometimes easier. Making things
Yeah.
possible. So,
I
yeah.
think there's something else that you had in a talk somewhere, and it talked about like how you see perspective, and that's so real though, right? Because there's always different
Yeah.
ways to build things or go about things, but I think the way that you switch your perspective is so real.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's also, but I do feel like that kind of comes a little bit later, but that's definitely a big part of the people puzzle. Another way to put that is if you can't teach a thing, then you don't understand it,
Oh, that's so real.
right? Because like if you like that's where the source of that was for me. And so the idea of that is that I can only ever understand a problem with the tools at my disposal. So my own eyes, my own brain, my own hands. I can understand that problem only so far. But then as soon as I try to describe the problem that I have to someone else, and they go, "Oh, well, what about this? Or what about that? Or have you thought about this?" Boom, right? Like I'm learning more in that moment than I would ever have been able to learn without those questions, without that perspective. And so
That's why I love
from
giving talks.
yeah, exactly, right? People come up and they ask you questions. And it also, even if you're giving talks with like someone else, just the two of you like giving a talk, you have two perspectives. That's already twice as much perspective that you had when you started, right? Like it's that, but yeah, for me it's like I can't learn more about a thing without somebody else asking me those questions or
Yeah.
trusting me to ask those questions,
That's
right?
why
Like being able to be
programming
open
is
to it.
also really good too. How did you get
Too.
into Kubernetes? Like, how did you go from, wow, this is cool, and I think this is the new train, to like being like, you are like huge in the Kubernetes community? Like, how do you get to the point of like learning and becoming that subject matter expert in something new?
So ironically, so I mean, I was already very good with infrastructure and distributed systems. I had spent years on Mesos, and I've done a bunch with OpenStack. I've been working on network virtualization. I've done a bunch of things in distributed systems over time. So I had already built up a lot of intuition about how these systems should work, and also a lot of intuition around how to go and learn about a system, right? So learning about Kubernetes for me was, okay, let's understand the components. Let's break them down. Let's understand what each component does. And then that was one thing. But again, like I can only ever understand it with my own experience, right? So the next thing I went to was while I was at CoreOS, I joined the Kubernetes Slack. And in the Kubernetes Slack, there's a room where everybody asks questions that they have run into that they don't understand, or some particular idea that isn't working, or whatever it is. And it's still there, and it's still a very busy channel, probably one of the busiest Slack channels I've ever seen. And for a long time, for about 6 or 8 months of the year that I was at CoreOS before it was acquired, I was answering all of those questions. So every question that I saw in there that I thought was a question that I didn't already know an answer to, I would go and figure it out and then come back and give the answer and also describe how I figured it out, right? Like, this is how I went about finding this out, or this is where I found the answer, or this is what the answer is, etc. Like, it just kind of was answering all of those questions. And that really expanded my brain on what Kubernetes is. It really got me to a place where I understood the project, the people, like what was actually happening with the code base, everything about that, because I was deeply immersed in answering interesting technical questions, helping solve bugs, and do all of that stuff with that. And CoreOS was very willing to let me build that presence because it really, yeah, I mean, one of the weird little industry secret things, I guess. It's not really a secret, but if I spend my time in a public space teaching and welcoming and making people feel like that they should be a part of the community and being technical and doing all of that stuff. When I show up in a pre-sales conversation, my job as a pre-sales engineer is to bring credibility to that conversation. Job done. I've walked into the room, right? Like people already know who I am. They already know that I believe strongly in the thing I'm doing. These are the things that people really want to see when they go approach a new product to determine whether that product will be a right fit for them or whether they will get any value out of it, right? So for me, that was one of the big moments where I realized, you know what, if I can do the thing that I love to do, which is this whole engagement part, and it really helps me do the thing that I'm paid to do, which is the pre-sales part.
I was trying to like write a blog or a talk, and I was writing about like the different ways that contributing to open source and community is actually a great way for corporations to get a return on investment. And by allowing your corporate employees to have hours to work on those things, and I feel like that really goes back to it. I was focusing on more like maintaining, and the fact that when you have like a group of multiple companies, maintaining software is easier and you can do it with less people, and kind of how much we get from the infrastructure that is 70% open source. But that is also like very true. Like you've earned trust with an entire community, and they know that you're not just selling them something. So like that's so amazing. Have you ever struggled with imposter syndrome, Duffie?
Yes, I have struggled with imposter syndrome, but I will say that like I think it's a little bit like dancing. It's like one of those things where like everybody, like nobody's good at it when you start out. Like it's like, and so I think I did come to kind of a reasonable conclusion of I don't really want to like let the concern that I'm not going to be good enough be a problem. And so instead I tell myself every room I walk into, every problem I engage with, I can improve that problem. Right? And that primes my brain to think that no matter the situation, I'm going to leave it better than I found it. Right? As opposed to allowing my brain to prime itself, in which it'll say, you're going to walk in here and fall on your ass, right? Like, I mean, like, instead I'm going to walk in here and I'm going to make it a better situation than it was before I walked in.
I love that.
And I'm not saying that works for everybody. I'm certainly not. I understand that anxiety is a very different thing, and I'm not trying to say that like
Oh no,
all you have to do is this. No,
just don't be.
Like not where I'm going at all.
Yeah.
Like simply one simply just decides. So I'm gonna no, it's not really it.
But I like that. I love the quote of like leaving the world a better place than like how you found it, though. So I like how that kind of ties into that.
Yeah, so that was how I got into the expertise side of the Kubernetes side of things, which was really a blast. It was like such a big learning time. And then I went from CoreOS when it was acquired by Red Hat, and it became basically the thing we were building at CoreOS was called Tectonic, and that became OpenShift 3.
4.
Is that right?
3 was the first. 4. I think 4 was the first one that shipped with the operators that Tectonic had. Yeah.
And then, but I never worked for Red Hat. Like I decided that I didn't want to continue with Red Hat. And so on my way to New York to go and interview for a job at Red Hat, I also stopped at Heptio and interviewed there. And I met Chris Nova, rest in peace. And I met Joe Bida and Craig McLucky and so many amazing folks. And so I interviewed there, and then I flew to New York for this other thing. And I decided already that I was going to go to Heptio. I wasn't going to go to work but I hadn't received an offer yet. And so I'm in New York. I've decided I don't want to do this. My very good friend, Stephen Augustus, is like working at CoreOS with me. And Stephen decides that the job that I don't want is the one that he wants. And I'm like, oh, we're making this happen. So I spent like the whole
musical
week.
chairs.
So I spent the whole week positioning Stephen, right? Like, and basically showing that I trust Stephen implicitly, right? Like everything I did that week was really kind of setting up that situation. And then at the end of the week, I was like, I think this really isn't going to be for me. I'm going to go and do something else, but you should really consider Stephen for this role. And they're like, well, we can't because You have it. So the only way that we could do that is if you resign. You know,
I
turn in my
love there's
paperwork, right?
two things that we need to
Yeah.
pull out of this. One, Chris Nova's like her legacy is so amazing that it's come up with so
Yeah.
many people on this podcast that I didn't know her personally, but I feel like I almost did by the fact that she's touched so many other people.
Yeah.
Also, the fact that you played it forward and helped out your friend and like took care of your friend is so legit. Like that is like having good friends in this community and like helping
Huge.
your
Yeah.
friend out is it just like obviously Steven's amazing at things. You know what I mean? But the fact that you
Yeah.
knew like, hey, this isn't for me, but I had know someone like that would be perfect for this. Can we have more of that?
Exactly.
Because that is so top tier.
Right. And I know without reservation that Stephen would absolutely do the same thing in the opposite thing, right? And it really even wasn't about that for me. It was just about the fact that I was like, I see this opportunity to help my friend. I'm going to go do that. And then, and that left us with a situation where I'm now without a job, I have prospects, right? Like I'm waiting for an offer or whatever, but I'm without a job. I'm in New York. I have my flight back, but I'm no longer an employee of CoreOS or Red Hat. I've turned in my laptop. I'm like, well, that's the show, you know. And then I fly back home, and my wife, who has got to be one of the most patient people on the earth, right? Because she already knows that I'm in this tumultuous situation where I'm like, likely things are going to change pretty soon and pretty
Yeah.
rapidly. But she's like, I'm good with it, whatever. Like, just let me know how it's going. Give me some heads up, And I'm like, well, that didn't work out, Like I'm in New York, and I'm like, I'm quitting like in 5 minutes. I'm gonna quit like now.
Duffie
Yeah.
was like,
And
so
she's
what
like,
happened was
and she's like, yeah, she's like, where are you gonna like? What's your next job? And I'm like, well, I'm working on it. Like
Yeah.
I'm.
that must have
So
been just a tiny bit scary, Duffie.
right.
It was probably safer for you to be in New York at the time.
A little
This
bit.
is-
But she's very like she strongly believes that I will work it out, which is one of those things where I think
You
if you
and your
don't have
wife's
that in a
relationship is
relationship,
just
like
so cute. It's so cute.
It's interesting too you mentioned because like I feel like in at least the cloud native space, Heptio had the same CoreOS vibe, right? Like
really
with
did, yeah.
pre-acquisition, it was kind of the spiritual successor of where would CoreOS go next?
The spiritual
And
successor. I love that so much.
and that was very much a
And
Heptio kind of.
even at CoreOS, like Joe came to CoreOS in the SF office, and I met him there first, and I met Chris there, and I met a bunch of other. They knew that they were closely connected, even
Yeah.
as companies when Heptio was starting up, right? Like Joe came and talked to Brandon and Alex Pulvey about like what they were doing. Like it was all the way open between the two companies.
Sure.
And so that was definitely part of it for sure. I agree with you on the. However, I will say that at CoreOS, there was so many things that CoreOS were working on that I felt like it was only like as a technologist, I was like, it's only a matter of time until something that we're working on becomes the thing that pays the bills, right? Like that is a huge move forward. At Heptio, didn't really have that same sense because at the end of the day, at Heptio, I felt like I personally was the product.
Yeah.
Right? It was myself, Josh Rosso. There were several of us, right? But like fundamentally, Carl Danley, like we were the product. We were the field engineering team at Heptio, and we were the thing that Heptio was putting in the market.
Right, because Heptio was a consulting company, not a product company.
But they wanted to be a product company. The
Sure.
thesis behind Heptio was they had so much expertise already around Kubernetes that they could come to market as a consulting company, use the learning from that to develop products and become a product company. The interesting challenge is that in the market that we all operate in, if you present yourself as a consulting company, you are henceforth seen as a consulting company. You can't just one day change your mind, wake up and be a product company. Like it's a very different go to market. It's a very different it's a lot of very key intrinsic differences in the way that people even think of you when they're out there like looking for who's going to help them do whatever it is.
That's also really interesting because it's almost like the chicken before the egg or the egg before the chicken, because you're just assuming that this knowledge will then create a product. But what if the product's already an open source product and they're just then consulting on it?
I mean, to be fair, like some of the products that we developed at Heptio are still going strong, and they're
Yep.
companies long, like Valero. A lot of the early stuff, a lot of the stuff that Gateway API is based on came from Contour. Like there's a bunch of stuff that we worked on there that like really became the way forward for a lot of interesting technology in our space.
And do you think just the way that it started it just didn't set that up for success, even though the product was good?
I think that I think that really I think the company itself was not a product company, despite the desire to be a product company. I think the company itself went to market and did everything else as a consulting company. And when they tried to make that, and they, I don't, I think we were kind of like having conversations and stuff around like what it would take to kind of change that when we were acquired by VMware.
Oh, okay.
So 2 very fast years. I actually got acquired at CoreOS and at Heptio, both in the same tax year, which was dumb.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're a poor accountant. Was
Yeah.
what's
And
it? Oh,
the VMware side of it, because like VMware had, or they turned the Heptio stuff into Tanzu, or they had Tanzu and acquire. I don't remember exactly the
So
merge there.
before the Heptio acquisition, VMware and Pivotal worked together to develop a technology that was called PKS, or Pivotal Kubernetes Service.
Yeah.
And that was based on Bosch, and it was like the thing that they had built in conjunction with Pivotal. Pivotal, if you weren't aware, Pivotal was a spin out of VMware. So the relationship between the two companies has always been very strong. So that's what they had developed before. And when we came in and we started a brand new effort, which was Tanzu. Tanzu was all of the work of Heptio coming into VMware and creating this new construct of like, how are we going to build a single control plane for multiple Kubernetes clusters? That was actually a product that we were developing as a product at Heptio when we were acquired. It was working with the VMware team that was actually trying to develop a Kubernetes offering on top of vSphere. And that was, at the time, it was called Project Pacific. So we were working with them to kind of turn that into more of a cluster API model, because at the time in the original design, they were thinking of each vSphere machine, each vSphere host, as a single kubelet, which was wild. And then they were like, yeah, but you could, because you're, a VMware offering, you could say, you could actually develop a different mechanism leveraging cluster API that will allow you to create task-based clusters on top of that whole thing instead, with a slightly different interface. So we worked with them to develop that. We did a bunch of there, and then Pivotal was acquired back into VMware, which was a pivotal moment.
That's wild.
Yeah, if you will.
Oh my God, Duffie just dad joked you. Like he just dad joked you.
I mean, the thing about dad jokes is they have to be bad, but also they have to be easy, right?
Yeah.
It just has to be right there, and he just grabbed it. So
it was
totally,
so good. Like
good.
I'm so proud of you, Duffie. That's great.
It was definitely a pivotal moment. It was it was wild.
Y'all missed Justin's face. He was like, "Did you just dad joke me on my own podcast?"
Yes, I did.
It's great.
So they came in. Heptio was, I think, like maybe 75, 80 people when we were acquired. And Pivotal was an entire organization with offices in multiple states. Like it was a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so and VMware, for all of its strengths as a company, honestly, I've never met a company that takes better care of its employees than VMware did. And I could have stories about that. But they didn't really have a clear, concise vision of how bringing Pivotal in and having Heptio there and working on Tanzu would all come together. Now, part of that was that VMware was fighting for its life. It was all happening right before like the whole Broadcom thing.
Yeah.
Part of, and like it's hard to really have a good picture of what the road ahead looks like when you're realizing there isn't much of it left, right? Like it's kind of terrifying. So what happened here was like it really became a very big mess. Like with people on both sides, Heptio, Pivotal, VMware, all trying to figure out what was going to happen all at once, but not doing it in a way that was cohesive. And it left a very big mess when the whole Broadcom thing happened.
Yeah.
Do you think
I mean,
that
they also just
contributed to?
jackhammered the road
I was gonna say,
ahead.
like, do you think that
Exactly.
contributed to the like final fallout of how things just? I feel like a lot of acquisitions like get spicy, but people were so upset with VMware when
Well,
after the Broadcom thing. You know what I mean?
I
Like,
I think the challenge is that, and I mean, it's a fascinating thing. Some of this is stuff that we all know intrinsically, right?
mhm.
Like, but what it comes down to is, as the industry in general, people who buy a hypervisor, everybody across the entire world, like automotive companies, banks, financial companies, everyone had built a high trust relationship with VMware. And VMware had gone to market with its sales and everything else to really support that function, really support a high trust relationship with its customers. Broadcom, they don't have that. And it's not really like in the company guide to do it. So when this acquisition happened, basically it became a situation where like even though I had a really high trust relationship with VMware, I don't like the other side of the table really doesn't understand that relationship at all, or know how to provide me something that allows me to understand the way forward. And so it's one of those things where it's like if you put some key focus area of your technology that keeps you going as a company in just one place, and you're not paying attention to what's happening in the space, you're not like we're learning, hey, you know what? I feel like this is actually a risk because I'm only counting on VMware to do this job. If I just believe in my mind that VMware will be there forever,
Yeah.
I might be making a mistake, right? Like, and
That
that
kind
was
of goes
like,
back to how you're talking
whew,
about seeing that next train too. You know.
yeah,
I also think it's interesting that I think a lot of times we get two companies that align on technology, right? And they want to acquire based off of technology, and their leadership principles and their kind of like who they are as an essence of a company can be very different, right? So even though their technologies marry together well, they're as a company and like the way that they interact with customers, the way that they kind of like how you kind of like talked about how when you're a product company versus consulting company, like a lot of that I think people don't realize how much that can affect an acquisition or a project transition or a pivot, right?
yeah, completely agree. Yeah, I mean, like right around that same time, I had this idea in my head that I was like, could you imagine if instead of Broadcom acquiring VMware, if it was Google?
I actually think that would have been dangerous and fire, but like in kind of a good way. You know what I mean? No, but
Right? Because
like
like,
it would
yeah,
have made them so powerful, and because people like you said, in their minds they were going to use VMware forever. They were locked in. Like
yeah,
they knew to a certain extent that they were locked in. And usually people get real nervous about licenses that they can't get out of, and people walked into it just
whole
you
hog,
know what
yeah.
I mean?
But also out of every company that has the least amount of trust, like Google is a meme of how they deprecate
You know that
things.
Justin was gonna. This is when
I
anyone
know.
Like
mentions Google, and
when you
Justin's
think
gonna
of
be
And
that,
this is
like,
where I'm like, this would have been so fascinating if it had happened that way. Like in the
yeah,
universe where VMware was acquired by Google,
it's
it would
like
have been
Marvel, the different
right.
universes and timelines. Like what
the
would have
Yeah,
multiverse,
happened?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
because the part of the challenge that Google has continually, right, is that they have
Is renaming
no,
things. Oh.
no, they don't that. And they also don't have like they don't have any way to instantiate that trust relationship that we were talking about. Right? They've like if that, but if they had bought like literally an entire enterprise sales force that knew how to do that, it would be a very interesting thing to see how that shaped
I
up.
honestly
Yeah.
think tech companies in general are going to struggle with the trust going forward. Like, there's been such a shakeup and it's
For
been
sure,
such a
yeah.
turbulent time that I think we forget how much trust has to do with it. You know?
And even, I mean, the Broadcom thing is a great example. Like, it's really changed the world for a lot of companies,
Yeah.
not just in how they see the hypervisor, but how they see networking, how they see firewalling, how they see file storage, how they see like all of the things that they have to concern themselves with as a company have fundamentally changed because they realize, oh, I was making the bet that this company was going to be around, and I can't really make that bet anymore.
I
And
think if you
be
also
honest with it.
take that and then the way that people are want to be so cloud agnostic, and then or like like people are like in this new era of, do I want to also, I think that like Justin's going to disagree with me, but I think people romanticize on-prem, and it's not that I don't think it's worthy, but I just think that we're piping it up a little bit more than people want to take into account how much that takes, which I think when you know what you're doing, it is good, right? Like, and I think Colo is a very good proponent and option, but I think that it's very much spicy headlines right now, and like because we are in just a spicy headline AI and all of the things, like it's really interesting. Like I can't tell if like I'm depressed and we're all doomed, or if this is going to be the most like fire, amazing innovation that's going to come out. Because as people get so high level about things, there's also these cool like new cloud companies coming out, or you know what I mean? Like, so I think it's like we're almost giving people trust issues with technology right now. Like,
I do find it funny, like the whole vendor lock-in thing wasn't an issue until the cloud, when they're like, hey, if I'm going to AWS, I want to make sure I can come out of
that's
AWS.
not true. Oracle
That was, I mean,
databases were the
Oracle databases were, yeah.
that was like
But
vendor lockout 101 that
But like
caused the
Oracle
cloud.
database was like this, they just like, we have to have the biggest, best thing, so we're paying the millions of dollars for
Oracle
license.
databases,
VMware
Sun
was the
and
same.
Java and all kind of things. I think that, and then wait, there's another layer. Talk about how open source was like, we're gonna be open source. Now you have a license and you can't use all this stuff you contributed to. We are in the like FAFO of like how much you can get away with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just what we were talking about on Blue Sky the other day, talking about if we would like to like what is the basis of like, do you run your own server? Are we having it in the cloud? Like we are at a point where we are using things that we've never used before. So it's not as easy as, okay, I'll just run my own servers anymore, because how are you making those servers redundant? How are you doing all this? But we also have realized how giving one company too much trust has screwed us over. So it's like this new kind of, where do we go forward in open source? Like, what are we contributing to? What are we putting our, like, what are we betting on? Because it could be licensed, or what are we doing with the cloud? Like, I really think that
I find that trust story interesting on both the small and large level,
yeah,
right?
because they're two different levels, right?
Lots of giant companies deprecating things, changing pricing models, doing whatever, that like, you're locked in, we're gonna then now just like screw you over. And the small companies that say, hey, you've been using this for free, now we're rug pulling you and we're changing the license and you have to pay us for it, right? In both cases, trust is eroding on the people are like, I can't trust the startup because what if they disappear? It's like, oh, but you can't trust the large company either, because they're gonna deprecate it,
Which
or
is
charge
really
you more or
interesting,
whatever.
because for a minute
Yeah.
there, large companies were the scary thing, and everybody was starting to like put trust into startups.
Yeah.
People that I know, that not just people that are using large companies are going to startups, but people that are FANG resumes were like, nah, dude, and all go like, like we are seeing this crazy migration and change.
Yeah.
It's wild.
I mean, there's a third part of this, which is that like foundations are a part of this puzzle too, right? So foundations are a situation where they might say, like, we, the foundation, in our in our bylaws, we cannot change the license of software, but you can donate it to us, like CNCF, the Linux Foundation, these sorts of things. You can't move a project that's in the CNCF from an open source license to another license. You
I
can
think
fork
that's
it,
going to be interesting too.
yeah, but you can't change it.
Because
But then I also think of like Rocket, right? Like, it's a CoreOS project that was a CNCF project that was still there. It just went away, because at some point you still need people to show
Nobody
up and
was
work
working
on
on it,
things.
right? Like,
Yeah.
But I think that's what we're going to like really get into, like, because if you think about it, like people don't know what open source to trust. Are you going to take it from underneath us and like after we contribute to it? And like, I really think that open source is the way forward, because like the fact, like when you have four of the biggest companies that do whatever you're trying to do, and you're all maintaining the same software and catching the same CVEs, you know what I mean? That's a force multiplier that you cannot create. Like it would cost so much money to do that, right? But at the same time, if we can't trust each other and we can't meet in the middle somewhere, and just if you look at it, like the CNF and
CNCF.
CNCF and like the Linux Foundation are kind of like these new like they're the basis in which these new foundations are starting. Rust very much took that game plan and saw what was happening, what was good, what was bad to build that. So it's like it's just interesting. Like we are truly like if you look at how much infrastructure and just tech has grown in the last 10 years, but now it's like almost like I don't even know how you make it faster, but we are in this crazy transition period.
It's true. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think I mean, to your point, like I guess to both of your points, I am an engineer. I'm working on an open source project. The project reaches some level of success. I, as an engineer or the author of that project, have a decision to make. Do I change the license of that to make more money off of that project? Do I contribute that project to an open source foundation so that that eventuality is protected from, but continue doing the work against that project as I move forward? Do I find some middle ground where I can donate the project but still sell an enterprise offering of that project? Like there's this, it's a really interesting time to your point. Like, and it's really hard because like all of these answers are correct, right? Like I worked on this idea. The idea was it was going to help me pay my bills. I need
Mhm.
to buy food. I need to pay rent, right? Like
That is so true.
I
Or
love
like a
working on
small
this thing,
company's got
but
to
like
have the infrastructure, like if a small
Yeah.
company is going to do something, they've got to have the money to continue the
yeah.
project.
So it's a tough one because it's like, from the outside, it's very easy for us to judge the actions of others in relation to all of this when we think, I trusted you to do this and this is what happened.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's like it's not even really about business. It's about how do I put food on my table.
I think we've got to find that middle ground though. Like the
Yeah.
engineers and the companies, they have to come, or just open source and companies have to come to that middle ground because we have to make it sustainable. Like the
Completely
bottom
agree.
line is 70% of infrastructure comes from open source. So companies need open source and open source needs the money from companies and the manpower, and trying to find a way to make that work is going to be so important. I really admire your career, like how you've navigated it and you've just stayed in open source, but also got to like, I don't know, I just feel like you get to work on so many amazing, high level, cool ways to like move the industry forward. What advice would you give to like me or other people or just yourself, like throughout your, like, what do you wish you knew throughout your career? Like when you were picking jobs or just pivoting and learning things, like, what do you feel like you learned if you could give yourself advice?
When I was very young, my dad was a chef and he was also a barber and he was also a Vietnam vet. He did and I remember us having a conversation when I was kind of starting to get into the working period of my life where I was like working with him in the kitchen and I was doing all this other stuff. I remember him telling me, you should get paid for what you know, not what you do. And that really shaped things for me because it really helped me understand that like when I look forward to like what I want to go do as a career, when I look forward, and I've jumped around a lot. I've been a bartender, I've been a radio station DJ, I've been a bouncer, I've done personal security, I've worked in tech across a variety of different areas. And in each of them, I was realizing that the thing that differentiated me in that job was that I want to know more,
Ah, I love that.
right?
Curiosity, which comes back to something that Justin said about like even in this new age of AI, like curiosity is going to be what sets people apart.
Exactly. That's always going to be your differentiator, right? Like, and it's hard. I mean, it's hard. It's a hard thing because, to be fair, like I've been at it for quite a long time at this point, so it's just intrinsic in the way that I see the world. That if I want to know more about a thing, I'm going to go learn it. That's just how it works for me, right? But it wasn't always that way, and I think if I were to give myself advice, it's just to embrace that curiosity, embrace that mindset because that's the thing that moves you forward. That's the thing that makes people see a bigger picture, whether it's yourself that sees that bigger picture or it's the people that you're working with that see that bigger picture. That curiosity that you bring to it and that drive to learn more about different things that are happening in the space.
And
Can't say enough about it.
and a lot of times with the whole like, what's the next train, right? Like tell people like, what are we going next? Like, don't worry about it. What are you interested in now? right? Like whatever you are interested in now is the thing you should go chase, because that's the thing you're going to be driven to learn more about. And if I've learned anything in my career, it's that everything is cyclical, right? Like all the networking stuff you did 15 years ago came right back at you in
It's so
Kubernetes.
wild. It's
And
like tech is like a bunch of like it's a hype cycle, but like really everything new is old and old is new, and it's just
it's
wild.
yeah, that cycle is a wheel, and as
Yeah.
you're learning one thing, it's going to come back around at some point, and you're like, hey, I remember how to debug this from 10 years ago. Even if it's not the same tooling, you still kind of remember the
Except
fundamentals
for when
of
you look at code that you wrote last week.
that person's an idiot, and that person should have never written that code. It's just never look at the git commit, git blame, and see yourself.
Oh.
Yeah, it's the
Ah,
worst.
Also, I think it's so
ah.
funny that Duffy mentioned that you like did security or something. Like, dude, Duffy is the kindest, sweetest person, and then you meet him in real life, and Duffy is so tall. You're like, hello, but you're still like this like sweetest person.
Yeah. And
What was
I
after?
think the other part of it is like, all of these different technologies are one thing, but the one through line for me, as I'm sure it is both of you, is people,
I
right?
love
Like
the people. I know it's weird because I don't
the-
really like people, but the tech people, like, oh my god, like,
yeah. But like being able to engage with people around those things that you're interested in, like that's the other. Like if there's one part of the puzzle that is literally consistently a through line all the way through everything I've done, it's I have to work with those people. I have to figure out what makes them tick. I have to figure out what they find interesting, and I have to like figure out how to communicate with them. And that's a puzzle I've been playing with my whole life, and will
That's what I
continue to
love
play with.
about Linux. Linux, I mean, it might be some like every now and then we get some grouchy old dudes, but like it is just oh, I love the community. Like if you want to see people like hardcore nerd out about some stuff and just customize things to absolute like chaotic like
Just because they can.
yes.
Yeah.
Like oh my god, like I'm either like oh peopling, I don't want to go to the grocery store, but get me like a
Yeah.
Linux conference and I'm just like I want to talk to all the people. Like I asked Carrie the other day, I was like, who's the golden retriever and who's the black cat in our friendship? And she looked at me, Justin. It was offensive how she looked at me. She was like, duh, you're the golden retriever. And I'm like, but not of everybody. And then I thought about it like, wait, do you find your people though? It's so
Yeah.
different. Like, dude, I swear one day I'm going to find out how to work in Kubernetes just to hang out with you guys. Cause like, it's the people. Like,
Duffy, when'd
Right.
you leave VMware and go to Isovalent? Where was that
So
shift?
after I left VMware, I actually went back to Apple for 6 months and realized that it was kind of a rerun of the last time I was there. And then I
Mhm.
left and I went to interview. But I had interviewed. I mean, I've known Dan. Dan Wentland is the CEO of Isovalent, and he's somebody I worked with very closely at Nicira. So again, right, the loop.
Yep.
And so when so I had talked to Dan about an opportunity to do what I'm doing at Isovalent, and then I saw an opportunity to go back to Apple to do Kubernetes there with a bunch of other friends that I'd known there for years. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do the Apple thing because I feel like it would be really great to see that finish, right? To see close that loop.
Yeah.
It was not ready to be closed, and so I left and went back to Isovalent, and I've been at Isovalent since, and had a wonderful time throughout this whole acquisition. And I was
Duffy, the
just
way
telling
you
Autumn,
handle things is so classy. Like I just like Duffy can tell you the good and the bad, and he makes it sound so good. And it's like it just like I'm just like I just teach me that quality. Like like the way you sum things up, I was like that was so classy. Like
thank you. And then the acquisition into Cisco. It's like one of I've I've been through this a few times, and this is the one that I am the most positive on. Like I actually do think I might be here the whole time, like that, like because I'm actually working on super fascinating things. Like Cisco is in a
Yeah.
place where it's like having its Microsoft moment. Whether it succeeds or fails is all up in the air, but like it's really changing as a company. Like we have one product leader in front of all of
Mm.
Cisco. That's never happened in the history of the company. We have like reorganizations happening to basically restructure the company to go to market as one product. It's like it's I never thought in my career that I would have an opportunity to see a giant like Cisco go through that much change, and I have a great seat. I'm like in the perfect spot to watch all of that happen. It's amazing.
I love this for you because you're such a like nice
Yeah,
person. I feel like you deserve this win. It's
yeah,
crazy because like Isn't it wild? What is your favorite job out of all the jobs that you've had?
Ooh, that's tough.
Because I feel like you've had like the most amazing, like you've lived like 6 lives, Duffie.
I think actually it's between. I'll say that it was the 2 years of Heptio and CoreOS. I think were the two probably the best for me because I really had an incredible connection with everybody who worked at both of those companies, and it really made me feel. It really enabled me to embrace that learning culture, and also at Heptio, I had the opportunity to help define that learning culture. Right? I mean, I did that a bit at CoreOS as well, but really just having that ability to just come in and say, you know, this team is going to move things forward for the entire company, and the way we're going to do that is by being professional, intellectually curious, being honest with ourselves and with our customers, and just like driving that home with the team. And it was an incredible opportunity. I think those two are my favorite jobs. I mean, this one's not bad either. I really enjoy Isovalent. I'm not saying that, but like
I used to think
Yeah.
that when managers or people like, in tech, like how it set you up to work on what you were most interested on, I used to think that that was just like a blessing, which it is, obviously. But it's wild how you will just go down the rabbit holes and work late and do all the things when it's something you're truly interested in. Like you start to see the business value in giving people that are curious those opportunities, because it's not just to be nice. It's wild how somebody will expand and innovate and become such a subject matter expert when they are given that runway, Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, I don't know what happened. We lost your audio.
when you're given the time to do it, and you're given the permission to do it, and you're welcoming, and like
That's
very
support.
different scene. I have to go though, so we should say our goodbyes, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Duffie, thank you so much for coming on. Where should people find you?
They can find me, in the Kubernetes Slack, the CNCF Slack. They can find me on Blue Sky as Maui Lion, so Maui like the island, and Lion like the big cat. You can find me on X that way. You can find me on Blue Sky that way. Yeah, I'm
That
on
username
Signal as
fits
well.
you so well.
Thank you. But thank
All
you
right.
both
Well,
for the
thank
time.
you. Yeah, thank you so much for coming and telling us all your story and history around how you've grown in Kubernetes and community
Yeah.
has grown. That's been great.
I missed you so much. I'm so glad we got to interview you.
And you can always find me at KubeCon and places like that. Anytime you see me, just come say hi.
Oh, it's so worth it. He's amazing.
Thank you
See you all next
everyone
time.
for listening, and we will talk to you again soon.
Thank you for coming on, Duffie.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Fork Around and Find Out. If you like this show, please consider sharing it with a friend, a coworker, a family member, or even an enemy. However we get the word out about this show helps it to become sustainable for the long term. If you want to sponsor this show, please go to fafo.fm/sponsor and reach out to us there about what you're interested in sponsoring and how we can help. We hope your systems stay available and your pagers stay quiet. We'll see you again next time.